Welcome to Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi TV from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm MK,
And I'm Courtney.
and today we are joined by the mysterious elusive. We've talked about him every single week for the last 9 months, but he has not yet been on the
You talk about me?
podcast. Doug. Yes, we talk about you all the time, which you would know if you
Oh, no.
listened to the podcast.
Which I understand
Would.
is very creepy since you just met me. But
I had to remind myself today what the name of the podcast was. I was like, what? I think I know. And then I had to check with Dan. So that gives you some indication of what I'm coming in with.
Yeah.
Much
So
less prepared than I intended to be.
Well, as long as you're prepared to talk about Stargate, it's really not that bad if you aren't prepared to know what we have said in the past.
I'm prepared any
Right.
waking moment to talk about Stargate, so we're good.
excellent.
That's true.
You're in the right place
Um,
then.
Before we get into Stargate, though, Courtney, how are you?
I'm making it. I'm
Okay.
already in vacation mode. I leave around the same time you leave to go on my cruise. And so I'm already planning to skip a conference tomorrow that I was supposed to go to. I am planning on just like sleeping all day on Friday. Like I have a whole list planned.
Wait, what
all
day
these
do you
things I need
leave?
to do. I leave Saturday morning at
Oh,
7 a.m.
okay.
So I'm flying out of Newark. So I'm staying at Noelle's Friday night because she's keeping Sadie and she's going to drive me in. But she's like doing stuff Friday night with other people who aren't me somehow. And so I'm just going to
Wait,
go
Noelle
get her
has friends
car.
that aren't you.
They don't live
That's
here. They're coming in from
respectful.
out of town. So I'm going to Jersey and getting her car and then coming to get Sadie and my stuff and just kind of like drive around the world. Yeah, so I'm like super in vacation mode. I told Brian not to book any meetings this week because I didn't want to talk to anyone at the office. And yeah, so I'm thriving. And I have wine I haven't drank in a while. I haven't drank wine in a while. I'm having some rosé, which is not like me at all. I'm a brand new person today. So yeah, how are you?
School's done, so like nothing else matters. After we got off of the podcast recording last week, I spent 12 solid hours still sitting in this chair grading papers. It was the worst day of my life, and I don't think my tailbone has recovered yet. But everyone was great. Everything got graded. Almost everyone passed my class.
Yeah,
I
I like
only
texted
had,
you in like the middle of the night and you were still grading papers. And I was like, okay,
yeah,
go to bed. That's fine.
yeah, it was rough. No,
Grading deadline.
what's that?
Got to make those deadlines. Grading deadlines.
Yeah, grading deadlines are the worst, except for I was telling Courtney before we started recording, I now don't know what to do with myself that I don't have grading deadlines or papers to grade or lessons to plan. And I've only been out of school for 4 days. So this is gonna be a weird summer because I'm already really unsure what to do
Catch up
with
Like
myself.
I
on the
said, you only got a little bit
podcast.
of time to kill before you take off for England. So
That's true. The only saving grace is that I have been planning for London. And we've talked a lot about my lovely partner in crime on this podcast before. And so it would surprise no one who listens to this to know that there are currently 3 Excel spreadsheets for planning our trip. To be fair, I did start one, but it was because I knew he was going to ask questions that it would be much easier to just print him the answer. I know, but it's going to be fine. We have literally every restaurant we're eating at the entire time we're there picked out. We have reservations made for like pizza places. Like that's the level of like intense this is. My mom looked at my spreadsheet and was like, that gives me anxiety. I'm glad I'm not going on this trip with you.
See, that is literally the only thing I did for my like I didn't do anything except book our like dinner reservations. Everything else I was like, what cruise are we taking? Where are we going? What time do I need to be there?
just
Like,
show up and let it happen, you know?
yeah, it's very unlike me. Usually I am also very spreadsheet to the T, but this time around I was like, just take me away. I don't care. So
So I'm just living my life right now. Doug, have you had anything exciting happen this week?
I don't know. Like you, by way of introduction, I don't know what you've been talking about me outside my presence, but I'm also an English teacher. So I similarly had my end of the year grading exams, helping grade the 11th grade ELA regions. At my
That
school.
must have been
It was a
fun.
fun number of essays to grade, um, things like that. And then in the past 3 weeks, it's been my dad's birthday and my sister's birthday. So I've had a bit of a whirlwind going with all
Also,
that.
your cousin, wasn't it also your cousin's birthday this weekend too?
Oh, my cousin's husband, it was
Yeah.
his birthday. He's also a
Right.
friend. He runs
Yeah.
my a D&D campaign that I'm a part of and some other stuff, so I know him pretty well. But yeah, I went out, had some drinks for ale um, last night. So, and then we had like an end of the year. All the teachers got together at my other cousin's husband's different cousin's husband. So Al is married to my cousin Jen, and then Mike is married to my cousin Erica, and he works at the school that I work at. So he had a party at his house for all the other teachers.
I don't think I knew that your cousin's husband also worked with you.
No, anyways,
Yeah.
so yeah, I was out for drinks 3 nights in a row. So I'm just drinking water tonight as a result.
I am still drinking the same bottle of wine that you've seen on this podcast like every week for the last 2 months, but today the cork broke and I can't close it, so I will now be finishing the bottle of wine.
As one
Mine's
does.
called while I'm not an English teacher, mine's called Lost Poet, so it feels like it's meant
Oh,
to
that's
be.
nice. Mine is actually called Steeplechase, which just makes me more excited for London. Because
Yeah, we're just planning ahead.
Or
yeah,
running 3,000 meters.
that
No.
is way more in your wheelhouse than in mine.
You guys aren't familiar with the steeplechase event, the greatest of the track events?
Um,
I don't run it.
no.
No, it's it's where you run 3,000 meters. So it's like running a 2 mile, but instead of it just being a 2 mile on regular flat ground like other races in the world, every about 150 meters you have to jump over a steeple like they use for horses. And once a lap, you have to do this over a steeple that has a big water pit on the other side, which is especially fun at like the high school level because there's going to be at least one person every race that like trips and falls in the puddle of water. So it's like a big pool, and so everyone loves that part.
Yeah.
It's just great fun. It's like if distance events were entertaining. It's great.
Mm,
Highly
yeah.
recommend.
I wish I
No,
liked running, but that sounds like I would just trip and
well,
fall all the time.
Well, you would be
I
making a lot of spectators happy if you did that, so it'd be fine.
Great, then I would be hit of the ball.
I think the only time I've ever enjoyed running was the time that a seventh grader challenged Doug to a race because he didn't know that Doug actually runs, and it was hysterical. Because then he tried to borrow my sneakers and said that it was his shoes were why he couldn't beat Doug, and he needed my sneakers to do it. So I gave him my sneakers. He still couldn't run. It was great.
I destroyed that poor child.
Good for you. Good for you.
You got to show him those
So
balls, you know?
Absolutely.
Um, sadly, I don't think most of our listeners are really here for track discussion, although it would make for a very interesting podcast because I know nothing about it. But what they are here for is to be inspired deeply in their souls. And as the guest on the podcast, Doug has graciously offered to share our inspirational quote of the
Oh no,
day.
no,
So
it's not our inspirational quote. I assume you two have your own, correct?
Nope. Just you. We do one per episode.
Oh no,
yeah.
this is horrible then because this is not a good
No,
So-
here's the
inspiration.
thing. So I usually give the inspirational quote for the sci-fi, and then she gives it for the horror since I lead the horror side and she leads sci-fi. So you've just like knocked work off my plate.
Okay,
And
well, I'll keep it
I'm thrilled.
appropriately dystopian. Mine comes with a story because it was from this past week.
Perfect.
Because it was my sister's birthday, we were out to dinner. And afterwards, my mom was going through some like random old materials, like papers from the last time we'd had a party involving Colleen. And it was like from several, well, not the last time, but from regarding my sister. So this was from several years ago when she graduated grad school. All of us, it was during COVID, so like we had a little meeting, like Zoom meeting like this, and everyone gave a little like speech like about Colleen, about my sister. And so we'd each like had a little piece prepared. And I found mine because we'd apparently printed them out for some reason to read off during this thing. And in that, I had a quote from Charles Lindbergh. who you may or may
Nice.
not be familiar with.
Yeah.
It's a famous
Yes.
individual.
His baby went
Something
missing.
I pulled for one of my parents to say. And it was from a letter that Charles Lindbergh wrote to his daughter in 1966. And he said, "If I had to choose but one thing could impress upon my children from whatever wisdom I have gained in life, it would be the importance of genetics in mating." Because it turns out he was really into eugenics and
Sure
was a
was.
person. So
Sure was.
that's what I went with. I thought
Love
That
it.
too if you were going to have real ones, and so that would be palate cleanser, but instead it's just sad and dystopian.
no, that's
I love
perfect.
it.
That is honestly so fitting for this podcast. Um,
In the actual
speaking,
written up part, I had a second quote from Charles Lindbergh that was actually good, but I could not find that one quickly
um,
enough, so I
that's
apologize.
fair.
This one was perfect.
No, it's perfect. Because also it is true that the genetics and mating are really important. Like my parents, they're lovely individuals. They're great. They both have a couple medical conditions, and somehow I have all of them. Everything that is wrong with both of them, I have. So
That's how genetics works.
Samesies. So good
great.
times.
I'm waiting for mine to kick in. Someday I will have diabetes.
I don't know though, because I've never met someone as in shape as you.
Now,
No, no.
let's
Well,
give it 5 years. All going downhill. All going downhill from here.
You
well,
fit right
we're
in with the
here.
podcast already.
We're gathered here today to
Oh, right, that's the
witness.
show we're supposed to be talking about. Crap.
Right. We're here to talk about Stargate SG-1 season 3. We've finished season 3. We're coming up on the end of the well no, we have ended the 90s era of Stargate. We're officially into the 2000s. It is a time Y2K did not kill us all.
Time of boy bands and pop stars.
Yes. What a time to be alive. Um, we were all alive at that time, actually. Um,
We were very much so.
I don't know very much so. We were like 8. I don't know how alive that is.
I remember it. It's like alive enough.
Oh, to be a child again.
Yes. So, Doug, how did you get into Stargate? What is your history with this lovely show of ours?
Um, let's see. I can't remember the exact like instigating event that caused me to find it, like how I was flipping channels and just ran across it. But I started watching Stargate at the beginning of season 7, just when it
Okay.
was on Sci-Fi Channel on its original run. And I very much enjoyed it, obviously. Um, and this kind of plays into a little bit what we were talking about before we started recording about the clip shows, because I was not familiar with a lot of the prehistory, and it was clear right from the beginning, like watching the show, that there was like a lot of backstory I was missing. And towards the end of season 7, there is a clip show, and that all those clips like partially catches you up a little bit on kind of like the context of what's been going on. But it also kind of made me go, oh, I need to find a way to like go watch these episodes. And at the time on Sci-Fi Channel, I don't know if either of you remember this. Every Monday they would do Stargate Monday, and they would play. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5 episodes of Stargate SG-1 all in a row from 6 a.m. or from 6 p.m. to whatever it was, 11 at night or something like that. And back then, because we're old, I'm sorry, we had a VHS player.
Thanks.
So my mom would record. I don't know how I assigned this to her. I would get her to, with a VHS player, record Sci-Fi Monday every Monday, so that when I had time after school or like on the weekends or whatever, because I was in high school at the time, I could catch up. I would watch, and they played them in chronological order. And I don't remember exactly where it started, but I managed to catch up on most of the show, like just watching this run of Stargate Monday episodes. And
That's
then
amazing.
eventually bought the DVD, started buying the DVDs and rewatched the whole series on DVD afterwards.
Now, I have a question. Have you ever watched Stargate Universe?
Yes.
Okay, that's the only one I've never actually watched Universe, and I know it's
Really?
not. Yeah, I know it's not as interconnected as SG-1 and Atlantis, but I that's all I know, and I do know that Robert Carlyle is in
Mm.
it, and I love him. So but
I
that's all
very
I.
much enjoyed Stargate Universe. I will keep things incredibly vague for the sake of Courtney, but
But
Stargate Universe I felt was underappreciated. It starts with like the first season has some peaks and troughs because they were very much in the wake of Battlestar Galactica at the time, and
right,
emulate that kind of a little bit more realistic style. And it took them a little bit of time to kind of feel it out. So there's some really good episodes, and then there's some kind of like bits that are a bit awkward in the first season. But by the time they get to season two, it really hits its stride and is fantastic. And then, of course, it got canceled after season two, which was incredibly sad. And it didn't really resolve some of the story stuff that would have been nice to, but I won't say anything.
which that's the only one that got canceled, right? So SG-1 and Atlantis both have like definitive endings, and Universe is the only one that was canceled.
I mean, Atlantis was also canceled, but they had more notice. Like
Right.
they were able to make their last episode like kind of feel like a final episode. But they didn't have enough notice that it could be like a fully planned out thing like for the whole season or anything like that. But
Yeah.
they might have had like 5 or 6 episodes worth of notice. Whereas Stargate Universe was canceled after I think they'd filmed or when they were already filming the
Mm.
final episode. It
That's
does end in a very, I won't, once again, I'll keep it very, very vague. It does end in a kind of nice, poetic, like there's a nice poetic, metaphorical kind of thing that it does, which I kind of felt was fitting for an end of the series where they're kind of like setting out on this new thing, then they don't know how it's going to end. Because I mean, that's the whole spirit of the show is stepping through and not knowing what's going to happen on the other side.
right.
So I don't know. It might just be me coping emotionally with it, being like, "Oh yeah, it's nice that way." But definitely, the story isn't really resolved. It's kind of left
Right.
with a cliffhanger. So
Okay.
it's a shame. I really, really wish. I mean, theoretically, what Amazon bought MGM
Yeah.
and has the rights now. It'd be nice if they got this nice big streaming service that they need content for, and
I
has the ability.
have heard lots and lots of rumors that Stargate is coming back, but everything that I have heard says that no one from the original creative team is involved, which makes me think that even if it does come back, it won't be good.
I
It'll be
mean,
more like a fan fiction style of it.
there's been a lot
Well,
of stuff
that's
over the years. There's been like for a little bit there was a what's the guy's name? The Roland Emmerich and some of his team were like thinking of like doing some sort of reboot that was unrelated, and then that kicked around for a bit, and then kind of went
well
nowhere, and then
because
there
Roland
was
Emmerich
a
he had a solid idea for a second movie that wasn't completely awful, but the show went so far in the opposite direction that it would not have made sense.
yeah at this point. And
Yeah.
there is a like there's been some like random talks and kicking around with some of the Stargate like the Stargate TV people, but it never evolved into anything like concrete. It was always just like, yeah, we kicked some ideas around, I pitched a thing, da 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 da, but then it never really went anywhere. So there's definitely nothing to latch onto at this moment besides
Right.
just being hopeful that someday
They will.
it'll get unstuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a favorite season? I'm not going to ask you to pick a favorite episode because that's difficult, but do you have a favorite season of SG-1?
I don't know. I can name a favorite episode, but
Oh, okay.
don't I don't know if I can name a favorite season just because I haven't given it very much thought in that context.
Right. What do you have a favorite episode?
I do, and it's not
Is
like a some sort of like I haven't done some like an objective analysis of
Yeah.
like all the different qualities, but just like
Yeah.
emotionally, the one I always jump to is Menace from season 5.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, I think you and I talked about this before.
we might have. I can't say anything specific about it, of course, because Courtney doesn't know
I don't know
what's going
anything.
on. But I just always really like that episode. It's got some really like just super engaging acting in it that I always really enjoyed. Um, which once again, I really wish I could talk about more specifically. But I mean,
We'll
there's a
bring you
lot
back
of
for season
episodes.
5.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of episodes that I really love. but that's
Yeah.
just kind of the one that I always come back to is just like something that's self-contained and excellent and just like I could watch a bunch of times without getting
See, one of my favorites is a self-contained one too, because it is actually truthfully probably not that great of an episode, but I just love it so much. And we've talked about this a million times on this podcast, but one of my favorite episodes is, oh God, the one in season 2 with the Native American tribe.
Oh,
Uh,
spirits.
Spirits.
yeah, yeah. Because I just am still so impressed with how they handled talking about Native culture in the 90s, because we still can't do that correctly on TV in 2023. And also the acting just made me laugh in every second of it. So like
Mm.
in the grand scheme of Stargate, it wasn't important at all. But
Yeah.
but in season 3 is touted as the season of wrap-ups. Um,
Like who?
Mostly people on Reddit, which is where I get most of my information. No, but so season Rotten Tomatoes does not do critic scores for anything other than the overall show. I figured out that they don't do a season at a time, but the audience rating for season 3 is 93%. The Metacritic score is only a 7.6. But we also had the same discussion at the end of season 2 that the Metacritic scores are much lower than the Rotten Tomato scores. And I think that might just have to do with the fact that more people know to go to Rotten Tomato. And so people who are less likely to objectively actually give real feedback will go on Rotten Tomato and be like, this is great.
It's
Yeah.
also a weird spot because I don't. When did like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic really hit mainstream? Like these weren't being, those reviews are not contemporary reviews. They're
Right. No, those reviews are all based on going back and reviewing it after the fact, because no one was internet reviewing anything in March of 2000. Like that's just not how the world was.
like I wonder if the you'd have to do like a sociological analysis, but like the sort of person who is going back and uploading a Metacritic review like years later for Stargate is probably doing that from a very different headspace than someone who's seeing it in a contemporary way. Like I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
if I'm reviewing this as a for like a DVD release in 2015 and uploading it to the season, the way that I'm critiquing like the visual effects is very different than if I'm seeing it contemporarily at the time
Yeah.
and used to what TV budgets and TV visual effects at that time were. You know what I mean?
And it
Right.
also has the advantage of nostalgia whenever you're going back, because I think we've talked about that in some of the other reviews we've seen for Stargate. Is it's a lot of people going back who have fallen in love with the show later on, and they're coming back and seeing it. We've seen that with a lot of shows that come out in the earlier times.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's interesting because like we on this show on our podcast we have reviewed everything from the 1970s to movies that were made within the last year in terms of effects. And it's funny to me that how the reviews for things like Kolchak aren't really that much different than the reviews for things like Last Night in Soho. Because if you like something, you're just going to say you like it. And if you don't like it, you're going to find a reason not to like it. Like internet reviews are not necessarily the most objective, valid truth. They're just like people being like, this is my favorite. I hate
And
it.
for the most part,
and so,
there isn't objective isn't really like a thing when it comes to art. I mean, we're all like some of us like to pretend we're objective, but at the end of the day, I mean, there's some things you can measure, right? Like if you're like who's taller, you can stick a measuring stick up next to there and see, you know what I mean? But when it comes to art, it's really like people have their emotional response to something, and then
Yeah.
we're all complicated, smart enough people to take that emotional response and then build the justification around that. Like you start with that, and then you go, why do I feel this way? And then you build your response up to that. You find the reasons. You're like, okay, why do I feel this way? You find the reasons why, and that's where you come from. You don't start with the like if you're making like an objective argument about something like policy or something that's like real world and not art. You start with the reasons and you see where that leads you to a conclusion. You don't build it in reverse. But art
Yeah.
is it's not even necessarily wrong that it happens that way. You start with the end result. You start with the emotional response and then build the reasons up back. You do it backwards. And that's not, it isn't wrong because that's art and that's how art's supposed to work. It's supposed to get an emotional response out of you.
Right.
It isn't objective. It's absolutely subjective all the way.
I mean, and there are things that are more objective, like in terms of like the quality of special effects. Like there's like levels of objectivity within it, but also at the same time, the kitschest, worst special effects can also create a good emotional response if if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like nobody, like, this is a completely off the wall example, but Spaceballs was never intended to be a good side. Like, it was a parody and it had the worst versions of the Star Wars special effects on purpose, and that's what made it good. So, but
even more so than that, you get people that, if you have a good emotional response to something that is just objectively technically inferior, people will still love that. I mean, look at how big vinyl collections are right now. Like, that is objectively a less precise, technologically inferior way of recording sound compared to like a CD. But that warm crackle that's in the background provides an emotional response to people that gives them that like warmth, and they associate it with like an older, safer place. And they're, because it's something they listened to back in the day or whatever the case may be. And so because it gives you that emotional response, you like it. And then you start with that emotional response and you build up the reasons back. Oh, it does this, it does that, the other thing. And that's not wrong. Like, if you enjoy that, that's absolutely your right to enjoy it. I'm not trying to, come at any joys of vinyl collection, but that is, it is subjective in that way. And you know what I mean?
I think Doug just like scientifically explained the entirety of the podcast talking about Hemlock Grove. We started with our emotional response and then found a reason to justify it because the show was bad.
I was only in the
I was going to watch that, and then
that.
based on your recommendation, I did not.
He was like, yeah, I was like, oh, are you watching Hemlock Grove? And he goes, yeah, well, I haven't started watching it yet. It's just in my queue because I was thinking about watching it. And I go, it's the worst show I've ever watched. I love it. I did it on the podcast, but it's not at all good. And then he took it out of his queue.
I have a definite emotional response to that because I watched it with you guys and it was like the beginning of this whole thing. And so I feel this connection to it as well. But I also don't ever want to watch it again in my entire life and don't ever no desire.
There is a certain value to watching stuff that's like objectively bad. And I would be fine with, like, if I had unlimited time, I would love to do it. But like, we live in the golden age of TV where there's just so much good stuff to watch. I can't justify
wasting 3 seasons
that amount of time for a curiosity just to see what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's why I love a bad movie. It's a lot faster, and you're like Cool World, I think is what it's called. It's like it's somebody was on drugs when they made that, but it is definitely one of those movies that like I saw in theaters. I was like, I'm so glad I did this. No one else in the world should probably watch it though.
Right,
just one of those things.
So back to Stargate, season 3. It's not unusual for us to go completely off the rails.
An hour from now, and he's going to be going back to Stargate, by the way.
Right.
Still haven't started talking about the show.
So this Reddit post I found when I was looking for season 3 is someone about the season of the wrap-ups. And these are all the things that were wrapped up in season 3. We killed Hathor.
Yeah.
Found Linnea, who'd been on the loose since season 2. Killed Shari. Rescued Skara. Killed Sokar. Tracked down and captured the off-world rogue NID agents. And found the Heresis. All of which are storylines that existed prior to season 3, except for the Heresis was at the beginning of season 3. So,
what was that? I'm trying to remember. Was the Heresis mentioned in the season 2 episode where they encounter Shari on the planet pregnant?
Yeah,
And
well, yes.
and the
So
Gould
she,
isn't like active at the moment at that time because it'll like hurt the child.
yes, yes. That
I
was,
think they used I don't know, I can't remember if they used the word heresis or not in that episode.
I don't know that they did.
I don't think
I'm
I'm
all,
familiar with that word.
yes, yes, you are.
Which
We've
one
talked
is
about
this?
Heresis is the baby, Share and Apophysis baby. The
Oh,
Goa'uld
right. Yeah.
baby that
I
has
just
all
keep
the
calling it the child.
yes.
Yeah.
No, I know they didn't use the word heresis in the
Later
season
it's
two
going to be
episode.
named Grogu, actually.
Right, the child Grogu. Got it. Cool.
Sorry.
They didn't use the word heresis in the season two episode because the first time we talked about that word was after we watched the
Okay.
horrible fan fiction miniseries, Stargate Origins.
Oh, okay.
That and they used the word heresis in that, and it was the
Right.
first time that Courtney had heard that word. So I know it wasn't
Mhm.
mentioned in the season two episode. Like the concept of the Goa'uld baby that had all the knowledge was, but the word wasn't.
Gotcha.
But so they've basically wrapped up just about every loose thread that they started in the first two seasons,
Mm.
which
Thank
puts
God.
you in an interesting place because we've had this show that had two seasons that never finished a story. And then in season three, they were like, boom, 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 and wrapped up all of the stories.
Mhm.
So that makes the idea of where we're going next more interesting, I think. And we'll talk about that a little bit later because I want to hear mostly I want to hear Courtney's ideas of where she
I
thinks
want
we're
to
going.
give a disclaimer. I don't use the right terms for anything.
No,
I've made up
she
new terms for most of the important things on this show, so I will reference them in the best way I can.
So I might have to ask for a translation at some point.
You may, yes,
potentially,
yes.
yeah. But they also did. I mean, there are two major storylines that we know are left open.
Mm.
One is Apophis, because the last time we mentioned him, Braytak was like, "LOL, JK, definitely still alive," and Jack was like, "Somebody teach that fucker how to die." And then the replicators, obviously, which we don't know anything about
Or Lego
except
spiders.
Lego spiders. Actually, Courtney, that is the perfect thing to say because it transitions me into the next thing that we're going to talk about. Because that is what Firewater calls them in his blog.
See, I knew
So,
it. Kindred spirits.
so Doug, for you, we found this blog last time we did a season wrap up, but called Firewater, and it is just a middle-aged writer who writes blogs about TV, but I think he may somehow actually share a brain with Courtney and I. The things that he says on this blog, and they make us laugh and smile. And so today I was like, let me once again go to our dear friend Firewater. Except that I don't know how to find things that I saved onto my favorites on Google on my phone. So there's
No one
that.
knows. And there's no way to find out either.
No way to know.
So, but the funny thing is, Courtney has been calling these replicators Lego spiders, which I hadn't thought of until she said that. But then I looked at the Firewater blog and he also called them Lego spiders. So that,
Well, while you're looking that up,
yeah.
Courtney, you want to start out on whatever your thoughts were there? Where do you think things are going? That's where we're
Yeah,
going, right?
I had no idea. I was like, these little guys have come out of nowhere. They're putting Thor at risk, which is an issue in my book. And so didn't love that. But then we blew them up and I was like, okay, I now know, while I don't know the extensiveness, I do know that they are a big deal. Mary Kate did tell me that. So obviously they'll be coming back. But I just assumed that like they died and it was just another round of something that came through that we'd never see again. And then when they came up at the end of I kind of mentioned this in our last episode, when it came up at the very end on top of the ship, I was just like, I don't care enough because I haven't seen enough of these things pan out. Like I see these like new things introduced and then they never come back. Or it's like they come back and die the next episode. And so I'm like, I wasn't as committed, but Mary Kate did tell me that they were a very big deal. So I at least know that much about them. I'm sure I'll have more feelings about them next.
No, and that's fair because we did have quite a few things this season that were like, here is a really big thing, and then it will never happen again. So, and unfortunately, I think that's just kind of a pitfall of sci-fi in general, is that not every idea gets a chance because there's so many.
Doctor Who has broken my heart enough that I get the idea, but
Doctor Who has broken your heart,
every time.
and you have not even watched anywhere near what I've watched. So just remember that.
I've only seen the new stuff.
They posted speaking of Doctor Who, BBC posted a picture today with everyone who's been announced for the cast for the new season so far. And one of the old actresses, like one of the old series companions, is coming back, and I'm way more excited about that than I am about any of the interesting people that they've cast so far.
If this is in a promo, it must be public knowledge, so I'll ask who it is. I'm curious.
Bonnie Langford, who plays Mel.
Mel.
What?
Wait,
What else has she done? Because I know her name.
She was been on Broadway. She was
okay. That tracks.
Yeah. She was in the original Broadway cast of she's the redhead who was with Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy. So she was at the end of the Sixth Doctor and the beginning of the Seventh Doctor.
Old companion.
Yes, okay. Old series.
I
series.
like Courtney. I have seen the entirety of the new, since whatever it was, 2000.
Christopher Eccleston.
Yeah, since Christopher Eccleston, I've seen all of them since then, but I haven't seen the old stuff. Okay.
I haven't seen the most recent season, but I did start the what's her name? Jodie Whittaker. I started hers, but I haven't finished hers.
The only episode I haven't seen is the most recent episode because we were watching it on HBO Max and it didn't get posted there for some reason. And I don't know.
That's rude.
But anyways, yeah, I'm pretty much caught up.
That's fair. No, they've announced like Jinx Monsoon, who is a drag queen from RuPaul's Drag Race and also a Broadway star, is going to be on the series, and Jonathan Groff is going to be on the series, and all of these people are so excited about all of these actors. And I was
Jinx is going to be on there.
And I was like, oh, Bonnie Langford's coming back.
I love it.
But okay, so Firewater's blog, I found it, don't worry. He says, if I didn't already know myself and just looked at my reviews for the first 2 seasons of Stargate SG-1, I would think that this Firewater dude was only lukewarm in his opinion of this science fiction series. That's not true. I like the show. It's just like,
I feel like that's how I talk about it though too.
Like, you're like, no, but I don't know. I don't like care it.
But then I get really fired up. Like, I do really like it. I just don't know what I can care about yet.
And then he goes on to talk a lot. I'm not going to read word for word, but he goes on to talk a lot about the same thing that we have complained about the show a lot. And is that we in 2023 are spoiled in terms of sci-fi.
Well, in terms of sci-fi budgets, anyways.
Well, true. But he mentions, he was like, the modern day special effects that make the series seem dated are one of the reasons why it feels lukewarm in his opinion. He said, it's no secret I'm a veteran and inveterate Trekkie, so I'm constantly comparing everything to any Stargate or Star Trek series. But also, if you look at the Battlestar Galactica reboot, The Expanse, Eureka, Fringe, The X-Files, we have so much more in the last 2 decades of sci-fi than really anything before that. I mean, and it's not entirely true. The sci-fi did exist That's not what I'm saying, but it's no longer, you're no longer a weird fringe part of society to be into sci-fi.
Yeah, valid.
And so that is one of the things that I also find that we struggle with, especially because Courtney, you're rewatching X-Files from the beginning right now. Or like, I don't know
I
how
never
far
watched.
you.
I was too scared as a child.
Yeah. So you're in currently watching the X-Files. I obviously am currently watching Strange New Worlds, which is the current
Right.
Star Trek series. I think I'm entirely caught up on everything Star Wars at the moment. Also Fringe. I like that he put Fringe in there because that was my favorite show ever.
Which is fantastic.
So it is true. But he said he also feels compelled to add that the worst of SG-1 so far is nowhere near as bad as the worst of what Star Trek has offered us.
See, I'm not familiar with Star Trek. That's like the one I
Now
didn't
just the
see.
dumping on Star Trek section of the episode.
Yeah. Well, no, because it says, I'm not excluding the original series from this comparison either, in case you're considering accusing me of being that old guy. Season 3 of the original series has several of the worst Trek episodes ever, which is true.
I am only slightly into Star Trek. I've watched a decent chunk of Voyager and some of the newer stuff inconsistently, but I'm definitely not I don't have a comprehensive knowledge of Star Trek.
Which is fair. It's
Maybe if you hang in there for 10 years, we'll go there next. Who knows?
Oh, sure. And then 15 years after that, I'll have seen it all.
Exactly. Yeah.
but so he says some fun stuff happens during the season. Hathor is defeated. We discover an actual Goa'uld system lord masquerading on Earth as a religious cult leader. He also dies. Daniel Jackson apparently loses his mind and ends up in an asylum. Don't worry, he gets better.
I love that episode. Am I
Me
the only
too.
one?
No,
Like
you're not.
when I was young and they did that effect with the I want to call it the puddle, the Stargate effect in the closet or like in the cabinet there, and he opens it up, and then
Oh,
the
that one.
face comes out of it. Like when I
Yeah.
was young and watching I'm someone who when I'm watching a thing, especially for the first time, I like to like set the mood appropriately. So I would be watching this at 9, 10 at night in a completely dark room. And when that happened, when I was, I don't know, I would have been like in high school at the time, probably, or maybe early college. Like I jumped, like when that
Yeah.
came
I'm
out. Like,
terrified.
Yeah, that was one of the more genuinely scary moments of this show that I was like, oh, holy shit.
it's really effective. Yeah.
Yeah. We get another alternate reality episode where Captain Kowalski is alive, and that realm's Samantha Carter is grieving the death of her beloved Jack O'Neill. This is the first time a possible love connection between O'Neill and Carter is mentioned. Okay. It is the first time it is explicitly mentioned. Let's not pretend that is the first time it is mentioned. Sam Jones.
I like that.
Sam Jones, formerly known as Flash Gordon, makes a terrific appearance as a spacefaring bounty hunter.
Yeah.
I had hoped he would. I had hoped he would return later in the season, but he didn't. One planet had a medieval Christian village where Satan sends demons to collect sacrifices. But just 5 episodes later, the Sokar story is continued and concluded. And he goes, "I wasn't sad to see Satan disappear as a recurring character."
It is kind of sad. Like Sokar, like that's the first time we see him on screen. Like he's mentioned a bunch. He's like in the background, but the first time we see him on screen is like basically he's there and then he's gone.
Yeah.
And the costuming department like really went above and beyond with him. Like he is an effective, scary looking dude. And I don't even know. I don't remember the actor's name. The actor does a really good job of like being just blasé enough, but then terrifying enough in the moments where he gets mad. That he seems like he is a good enough. He is well thought out enough and well acted enough and well designed enough that he could have lasted past an episode and been an effective villain. And they're just like, goodbye, blow up the moon, blow up your ship, see you later.
We talked about this when we talked about this episode on the podcast, but I don't know if you know this, Doug. That 2-part episode blew the budget so far out of control for this season that it wasn't supposed to be a two-part episode. They made it a two-part episode because they couldn't justify the amount of money that they had spent on set and costumes for that episode without making it two episodes.
Oh, I did not know that.
They were like, we done they built that whole they built hell, and then we're like, that was a thing that we just built, and they were like, can we maybe split this into two episodes?
It does feel like that. Like, 'cause I literally just watched. So I had been watching with David, my friend David,
Right.
we're just kind of watching through the series, but as we mentioned earlier, very slowly because David's not capable of being in rooms with people very often. And we're about halfway through season 3. So in preparation of doing this tonight, I I watched a couple episodes from the end of season 3 just to kind of be caught up and make sure that I knew the major story points. And that was what I watched. I watched the 2 Harry Ceaseless episodes and that 2-parter on the moon with in hell with Apophis.
Yeah.
And then I watched the season finale, which that I didn't need to watch because I've seen that episode a lot, but I just like that episode, so I watched it anyways. But I didn't know this about the background, but having just watched it, it does feel that way. Like it feels like one episode that got split into 2 episodes. You can tell.
Yeah. Like they added like little bits of things to fill up the time, but it didn't need to be 2 episodes, except for the budget needed it to be 2 episodes.
Someone went on a
pacing wise, it drags a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went on a spiral, and they it was like somebody was having an ADHD moment, and they were like deep diving into their rabbit hole and created this entire thing, and then fell out of it. And we're like, oh, that was a lot more money than it was supposed to be. Whoops.
Oh, so Dan and I planning a vacation.
My bad.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what you're talking about with
anything
the way we're spoiled with sci-fi now, because like if this is a Netflix show nowadays, first off, you don't have to do it on like a 10-day turnaround like they did for network TV, even though it was Showtime. Like it was a short turnaround, short-term TV budget. They were spending like $2 million an episode. Compared to nowadays, you're like, yeah, we spent $10 million on the episode and we went over budget, but we just asked Netflix for an extra $5 million to cover it and we're good to go. Like, it's just such a world that they live in to cover any extra visual effects you need, any extra like B-roll of big stuff, and you just didn't. Just such a different production world back then.
Yeah. This season, we also have the Destroyer of Worlds story revisited and given a Fountain of Youth twist.
I enjoyed that.
Me too. Dom DeLuise guest stars as a trickster character, much like the Great Gazook. Which Courtney is like a Dom DeLuise stan. I don't know.
I do like Dom DeLuise a lot.
I thought of you actually.
He's been in everything.
He is. I actually thought of you a lot this week because for some reason, the guys, you all know I listen to podcasts that are like 9 years old because I'm so far behind. But the guys on the last podcast on the left have been doing a ton of random like inserts about Dom DeLuise on their podcast. I have no idea why that's where they're at in this moment.
Well, DeLuise family is very Stargate involved, right?
As Peter directed the episode that his dad was in, and he's one of the more prominent directors of the show. He's also been in a couple episodes.
There's a couple cameos as well.
Yeah.
And the other actor later on.
Yeah, he shows up later in the series as well. The Stargate Command Cheyenne Mountain Complex is overrun by alien infiltrators in what's known as a foothold situation. During this plot turn, the furtive Colonel Mayborn becomes an adjunct member of the Scooby Gang. And don't worry, he ends up being kicked off the team again a few episodes later. We also get a space trial episode. It says, remember Daniel Jackson's wife, Sharae, whose rescue from the Goa'uld was Jackson's chief character motivation for 2 seasons? Well, she dies.
I have been yelling about Sharae since we watched the movie. Like, I cannot. I'll never be satisfied with how that was handled. But it's okay. It's fine. I'll let it go one day.
I feel a little bit like the writers, like they had that as a plot point early on, and then they kind of just got caught up in other things, the episode of the week, monster of the week, and kind of forgot about it a bit. And then they're like, we should probably just wrap this up so we don't have to keep having that hanging over our heads.
Yeah. If you do hear the first couple of seasons of our like Stargate episodes, literally every prediction I have, I think, is like, oh, Shari's going to be the next episode. Oh, this is going to happen with Shari. Never. It never happened. Oh, God. So,
Although I will
that's
say,
pretty
even though I agree with you, like it feels like that should have been more prevalent. That episode, Forever and a Day, I really do like that episode. It's a good episode,
yes.
and it is
It's a good episode.
it's left ambiguous, but based on the episode title and how it ends, it does seem like that entire episode is just in Daniel Jackson's head, right?
Yes, that's what I said. That's not what I believe too. We talked about that in the episode. I was like, I'm 99% sure none of that
I
happened.
had forgotten that. I
Yeah.
totally forgot that, and then just because I just rewatched it today as in the lead up for the podcast, and I was like, "Huh, I did not remember that being a thing." But now I'm like, maybe it's just because I'm older and wiser. I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's just that
Yeah.
whole thing
Yeah,
again."
no, I will say the first time I watched it as a kid or a teenager, whenever I watched it, I didn't realize that it was probably not actually happening. And then I watched it again this time and I was like, no, I'm pretty sure none of that happened.
Okay, well, I'm older and wiser, and I was still like, I think half of this is in his head and half of it's not. But it's my first time watching it too.
It is. I
But
mean, it's purposely
I
left
just
in.
like, I'm
So
so
Yeah.
conflicted.
I think you can interpret it either way.
We also have Colonel Jack O'Neill getting stranded on a planet and falling in love, but then in the very next episode, he seems to betray the SGC and join up with the rogue Colonel Mayborn for some single episode hijinks.
I mean, was anyone watching the show really convinced that Colonel Jack O'Neill was a bad guy now? Like,
No.
so it's fine.
This next this next paragraph is his description of the Mother Nature episode, which I will not read because he just writes an entire paragraph with spoilers and then says no future season spoilers for me though. The whole paragraph is spoilers. But he does mention the fact that the Mother Nature figure is a non-corporeal being. And he says, speaking of non-corporeal, Daniel Jackson is temporarily turned into a ghost by a crystal skull that has nothing to do with Indiana Jones or Dan Aykroyd.
Correct?
This is well before Crystal Skull and
Yeah.
Indiana Jones started being a thing, or started even being written, probably.
Right.
It was like
And
8 or
then-
10 years. We looked it up. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Really fast hot take to make everyone really mad.
Go for it.
I think all 4 Indiana Jones movies are approximately the same quality.
That is a hot take. That is a very hot take.
Anyways,
Uh,
for
The
anyone
Indiana
listening,
Jones I've seen is the Disneyland show, Disney World show. I haven't seen any of the movies, so
I enjoyed that, the Disneyland or Disney World, like the little stage performance, you mean?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's fun.
yeah, I like that one.
I think most people's grievance with the 4th Indiana Jones movie is Shia LaBeouf's existence, and I
I
happen
did hear that a lot.
I happen to be a pretty big Shia fan, like to the point where for Christmas a couple of years ago, I bought him a designed poster for Christmas that said, Shia LaBeouf believes in you. So
I
it
don't
is
have
what it is.
strong feelings about Shia LaBeouf one way or the other.
Then finally, we are introduced to the Stargate SG-1 equivalent to the Next Generation's Borg, the Replicators. If the Borg were Lego spiders guaranteed to raise the hackles of anyone with the tiniest bit of arachnophobia, the Replicators have threatened the existence of our favorite Roswellian aliens. The first Replicator episode, Nemesis, provides the cliffhanger conclusion to our season.
Me and Firewater
Yeah.
are on the same page.
He gives the whole season a B plus and says that it's his favorite season so far. His biggest complaint with this season is that the Goa'uld he says they seem a bit toothless this season. After having been such a huge villain in the first 2 seasons, every Goa'uld we face this season, with the exception of Apophis, we kill within 2 episodes of seeing them. So I do see why that complaint would exist. As we were going through that, we kind of talked a little bit about each episode. which
Yeah.
is great because then I don't have to refresh you too much about what the episodes are. Because we're gonna play a game
Ooh, I love games.
called What
I'm gonna
Grade
win.
Did That Episode Get? I found I found a one of the reviews on Metacritic is literally just someone wrote every single title of the episode and a letter grade as if they were a teacher grading it. That's their whole review. There was no other words except for episode title, grade.
Is this A through F?
Yeah, it is. It is A through
Do
F,
they
but you can do
include-
pluses and minuses. They included. And so just for shits, I will tell you that their overall rating of the season was 8 out of 10.
They did letter
Um,
grades for all the episodes, but then scored it on a number scale?
Well, because you have to score it on a number scale on Metacritic.
Why?
Like you're choosing a number
Oh,
scale.
Metacritic.
You're choosing a number scale. So their overall rating was an 8 of 10, but their individual episodes they scored on a letter scale. And so I'm going to go through each one, and I want you guys to put in your vote for what that episode should be related, and we will see if For Reals 13 agrees with you.
Great.
Okay.
Oh, we will.
So the first episode is Into the Fire, which, if you do not remember, is the end of the Hathor two-parter where
And my cheat
Jack,
sheet.
perfect, where Jack does not become a Goa'uld but almost becomes a Goa'uld, and then we kill Hathor.
All right.
So I guess we can alternate who goes first. Courtney, we will let you go first to give Doug a chance. So what you give it a C. All right. And Doug, what would you grade the episode Into the Fire?
I feel like I'm going to end up being very forgiving to all of these because, frankly, I just am emotionally compromised where Stargate's concerned. I'd probably go with a B minus.
Well, you are both harsher than For Reals 13. He gave that episode a B.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily going to say that he is a better grader than you, because some of them I don't think I agree with, but we'll see. So he is the most forgiving in that first episode. Then we get to Seth.
So I'm going first now.
Yes, you're up first now. What would you say Seth is rated or
I'm
graded?
going with a B plus.
Okay. Courtney?
I was also going to say B plus.
Wow. You guys
I don't know that I
are-
liked it that much when I watched it, but like the more we've gotten away from it, the more I really appreciate the storyline and like all of the work that went into making that episode.
Apparently, For Reals 13 does not give a shit about cults because he gave it a C plus.
Wow. That seems harsh.
It does seem harsh. I would probably go closer to a B minus than a B plus for that episode because I don't know how it fits into the overall plot of the show. But
I mean,
C
are we-
plus.
Does something have to, in order for it to be good, does it have to fit into the overall?
No,
You can
no.
have really great
That's
bottle episodes.
That's very true. And both of us have said that our favorite episode of the show tends to be a standalone episode. So that's fair.
Well, mine's not exactly the same episode, but
That's right.
ish.
Then episode 3, Fair Game. Which, Courtney, you have a cheat sheet. I don't remember which episode Fair Game is.
Yeah, I put that
That's
it's the
the
Protected
negotiation.
Planets Treaty,
Oh,
and I only
yes.
vaguely know what that means.
So this is the episode where we meet the Goa'ulds, who are the Asian one and the Greek one and all the other Goa'ulds, and Thor makes Jack be part of their diplomatic discussion on whether or not they can protect Earth, and then the one Indian goddess betrays everyone and tries to kill them all.
Nirti.
Yes.
Well, we
So
remember Nirti from, because Nirti is the one who put Cassandra's bomb in her in season 1, so that was a callback.
that's true. That's true. And that's why Sam had such a weird feeling about Nirti being there in the first place. We did talk about that in the episode. So Courtney,
And also
how
our
would-
first introduction to the System Lord Yu, who is just the source of so many delightful puns throughout his
that's
tenure.
true. It's very true.
I love you.
I love you, Doug.
See what I mean?
I'm not a huge fan yet, so well, I'm
what I
gonna go
mean?
with
Delightful confusion.
So I was gonna say C minus, and then you said that Narity was like callback to the Cassandra episode, and I was like, oh, you get a little bump. So I'm gonna go with a C.
Okay. How about you, Doug?
I'm gonna stick to B minus.
Well, this is a B plus and for Reals 13's grade. So maybe they just hate all the episodes that you guys like and like all the episodes that you hate.
Mhm.
Maybe.
I feel like I'm
Uh,
building in room, like, because I enjoy all these episodes so far. I
yeah.
feel like I'm building maybe honestly the season opener is like kind of just fine, but like I really
Yeah.
enjoy that and fair game. I feel like I'm just
Yeah.
like leaving room in my grading right now because I want to make sure that I can give really good scores to a few key episodes without it
That's
diluting them.
that's so valid. I will say he or she, I don't know the gender of this person because they don't have a name on their profile, did not give anything an A plus. I will just say that.
All right.
Um, Legacy, episode 4. Again, I don't think I remember what episode that is.
Marcella takes over Daniel's body.
That's what we were
Oh,
talking about with the puddle in the closet.
this is the puddle in the closet. Yes. Okay. Perfect. So, Doug, you're up first this time. How would you rate the
Um,
puddle in the closet?
I really enjoyed that episode. I'm gonna give that an A.
I'm gonna give it an A minus. I also really enjoyed it.
Reels 13 says B minus.
Wrong.
Wrong.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree that it is better than that, than a B minus. I think I would probably do a B plus. Um, the next episode is Learning Curve, which is the episode where they teach the people on the planet, that you don't have to mind wipe your children after they learn things and build things for you. Um, and yeah. So, Courtney, what would you give Learning Curve?
I'm gonna give it an A. I really liked this one.
I
Right?
would
And
also give
Doug?
it. I almost just lost my mind and gave it an A plus, but I'll stick to A. I really like
Okay.
Little Food. It hits all of the like beautiful little sappy notes, and it gives Jack like I feel like Richard Dean Anderson over the years he starts to lean a little bit maybe too much into the blasé. Like because it is such a great part of his character, but like occasionally it can make him seem like uninterested. So when you get the episodes that you feel like Richard Dean Anderson like really like latched onto the material and it brings out the best acting qualities in him, and this is one of those episodes where you can tell that he cares,
Yeah.
and like him and the girl just work well together. It's nice to see the outside world for once. The little matte painting that is like the other planet is a little bit meh. They've got like one room on their planet, but that's just TV budgets. But the
Yeah.
story works really well. It has a great emotional payoff.
I
And
cried.
it's nice to see Jack being the one that is the emotional payoff, because so often that gets left to Sam as the woman or Daniel as the like sensitive one, that having
Yes,
Jack be like show that he was a father and like show that his like he has that in him. I would agree with both of you guys. This would probably be in my top 3 of the season. Unfortunately for Reels 13, only gave it a B because they suck.
Yeah,
Yes.
clearly. Why are we
I've
listening to
learned
this
that.
again?
Just because it has grades already there, so it makes it fun for my game. That's
Okay, perfect.
yeah.
Trying to make sure we didn't
uh,
want to talk this person.
no. They also only rated the season an 8 out of 10, so I don't necessarily agree with them because I think it's one of the best seasons of the show. So then
So if we lose exactly one listener, like at this point in the episode, we know who that is.
that for Reels 13 is
Yeah.
in fact a listener of the podcast. Great. The next episode is Point of View, which again I don't remember.
It's the alternate reality with Carter and Kowalski.
Okay. No, see, the problem is I remember every episode. I don't always remember which title goes to which episode.
Mhm.
So this is Point of View is the alternate reality with
I didn't write
Sam
title,
and
name, title.
Kowalski.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
This is a
I'm
great
gonna give
one.
it a B plus.
Okay. And Courtney?
I'm gonna give it a B minus. I didn't love it as much as some of the other ones, but I did like the Jack and Carter. storyline.
That's the thing. I am a sucker for any time that there's a Jack and Sam subplot. It automatically gives me like a whole grade level above what I normally would have said anyway, because I just am a simp. And so I think I actually agree with For Reals 13 for the first time with an A minus.
Okay.
They're real into the Jack and Sam story.
Yeah, I think so. The next episode is Dead Man's Switch, which is the episode with the bounty hunter. I actually watched this episode with you, Doug. So what do you rate this episode?
This is just a fun episode. Like all the banter and like the back and forth where they think, they think they've gotten him and then they haven't gotten him and then he thinks he's gotten them and he hasn't gotten them. Like it feels almost like a heist movie or something where the constant kind of back and forth and like the clashing of the intellects, like who's going to outsmart who throughout the whole thing. And they're both always like the bounty hunter and Jack constantly like thinking they got one over on the other. It's just a really fun episode. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with the same as the previous one, I think. B plus. It's just a really solid, fun episode. It doesn't like do anything that like really like hits you emotionally or anything, but it's just a good time.
So I went a little bit lower. I'm gonna go probably C minus. I didn't get a lot out of this episode. It was fine, and I love a heist movie. I think I was actually watching the colorful show, whatever. I don't know what it's called, the one that came out on Netflix, while we were in this time frame.
Oh, Kaleidoscope.
And Kaleidoscope, yes. So I love a good heist. You know that's what it is. You pick colors and it becomes a show. So I love a good heist.
I didn't watch it, so I don't know what you're talking about.
And even if we had, we wouldn't necessarily have, because the whole thing I didn't even realize this at first. Apparently the whole conceit of Kaleidoscope is that every person who watches it sees the episodes in a different order. It's random.
You watch it in whatever order you want. So I watched it in the rainbow order. So I did like Roy G. Biv to the equivalent of what I could. But you can choose your own order.
And supposedly it should make sense no matter what order you watch it in. I don't know. I haven't watched the show. I just found that fascinating. I assume that like
is fascinating.
The person who loads it up, that it shows the episode order in a different episode to like encourage that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it was interesting.
Yeah. For Reals 13 leans a little bit closer to Doug in this case, with a B. I would probably personally do like a B or a B minus. It is a good episode. I like it a lot. It makes me laugh. But I don't remember the plot as much as I remember the dialogue and the characters. So I would rate it a little bit lower, but I would definitely not drop as low as Courtney did. The next episode is Demons, which is our medieval Christian church village episode. And Courtney, what do you rate this episode?
I think I'm gonna give it a C plus. It wasn't like life changing, but it had enough chaos in it that it kept me going.
And Doug?
Yeah, I'll concur with that. C plus is fine. It was fine. That one was kind of there.
We finally have a unanimous answer because For Reals 13 also gives this episode a C plus. I probably would give it higher than that, but I would only rate it higher than that because I am weirdly fascinated with the Teal'c as Jesus metaphor that happened through the whole episode and like diving way too deep into like the religious subtext.
Yeah.
So it had absolutely nothing to do with the episode itself. It was all in my own head. So I think that the C plus, the consensus of C plus is valid. Next up, we have Rules of Engagement, which
this is where we have our fake SGC planet, and we show them that Apophis died.
Oh yes, with the Jaffa that are being trained to fight the way Earth soldiers fight.
Right.
Doug,
Solid.
you're up first this time.
I'm just gonna go with a B. I think it's a solid episode. I think the like the cold open is probably one of the better cold opens, like running across a random SGC or an
Mhm.
SG team like on another planet and being like, why do we have a SG team that we've never seen before? Like that the characters have never seen before.
Yeah.
Like just out there in the world. It's like a good just kind of makes you go, huh? Like it's a good hook, good question hook.
Yeah.
And it's one of those episodes that starts stronger than it ends because like the end bit with just like they like show a videotape of, and it's something that plays probably worse nowadays when we're used to like video being spoofed. Like these people
Right.
or like have futuristic technology, but videos never. They're just immediately trusting of everything.
Right.
Um, but it kind of just tails off. But it's got a lot of good stuff in it as well. And I like it does our first introduction to I can't remember what they're called, the the guns with the red crystal on the bottom that are like stun guns, which are
Oh, yeah. I don't remember what they're called either, but we talked about in the
Mhm.
podcast, we talked about how that was the first time we'd seen that weapon. You're right.
yeah, they don't use them much. They pop up in a few other episodes, I think, when they're doing like training. So they're not like a major component of the Stargate universe because they have other guns that stun too. So it's not like
Yeah.
big deal, but they are kind of handy and they're fun that they got a new toy.
I think I would agree that it's a really strong cold open, but not necessarily a super strong total package from beginning to end. But Courtney, do you agree
Uh,
with?
I think I'd give it a B plus. Because I liked the storyline. And well, yes, we would not buy into the spoofing as well now. Like, that we can Photoshop shit or whatever. But like, I thought that was a really nice touch for what it was. So I liked it. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't my favorite, but it was a good one.
Rule for Reels 13 gives it a C plus. I don't tend to think that this person knows what the fuck they're talking about based on their answers. But next up is Forever in a Day, which we have talked about a bunch in this episode so far. And Courtney, you're up first with your rating.
You know, I want to give it like an A and a half, like an almost A plus, but not quite, because I will never not be mad about the placement of it. Like, I think it should have happened much sooner, and I will always stick to that. But if I'm just looking at it from the episode itself, it was really good, and there's a ton to talk about with like, what do you think happened? What was in his head? What was not? And like, we do finally wrap up the Shari episode, so it was really well done.
Yeah, I would also. I'm not gonna give it an A plus. I'm gonna go with an A minus. I really liked the episode. I was particularly impressed. I just watched this one today, so it's fresh in my mind. I was really impressed with some of the editing. Like, there's a really nice transition shot where Shari is over his shoulder, and then the actress must just
Mhm.
kind of get real low in the bed behind him, and then they do this lighting shift where they shift from like the light being on in the room to it being nighttime with it off, and then cut to him turning to the empty bed. So they transition there, and then like when he goes from his house to the planet, that's always a fun little editing
Oh, that I love
there
that
where
scene
they.
when he opens his bedroom door and walks right into the planet. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those in this episode that are really, really tasteful. It's some really good acting all around, especially for Michael Shanks.
Yeah.
And the character stuff between him and Teal'c, and even with Jack, like you see him being hilariously hostile to the Michael Jackson Light character that comes in, who I think sadly I don't think we ever see him again. I'm not sure.
We never see
Um,
him again.
I don't I'm not sure. He might pop up
Wait,
at some
wait,
point. He definitely isn't like
which
a
one?
major thing again. The Michael Jackson
Sure.
is the guy with the glasses who I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
it
yeah,
might
yeah.
also be imaginary because
Right.
well, it might be Michael Jackson's head, but that character is just kind of funny and amusing for a little bit. But just everything kind of works. The only
Is this the time that we see the Daniel Jackson's research assistant?
yeah, that's who I'm talking about. The
Oh,
research,
yeah, yeah, no.
his former research assistant.
He does come back in
Very briefly at some point.
Crystal Skull later in the season in Crystal Skull and he's useless at doing research then too.
Okay, I didn't rewatch
Yeah.
Crystal Ball for this, so I forgot about that.
Yeah.
The part that I saw when you were watching it, I walked through the room, but briefly.
So For Reals 13 gives it a B minus. That is harsh. I think that B plus at the lowest. It's like a big emotional episode to wrap up a 2 season long arc that we need, like, and they
Right,
do
and while I
it
don't
wow.
like the timing, I do like the way it was wrapped up. Like,
Yeah.
It also has a really good opening, like kind of an underrated. It doesn't become relevant later in the episode, so you kind of forget about it. But the action scene that opens that episode,
Oh yeah.
the better ones they've done, like with all the Jaffa charging down the dune and they're just mowing them down, and you kind of get the sense that the Gould are these. They are commanders that are used to having very disposable armies. Like they have no tactics or like strategy half the time. They're like, oh, just yeah, everyone run down the hill and go kill those guys. We just, I don't care about your
Right.
life at all. They're
Yeah.
just gets on the 50 cal and just mowing them down coming down the hill.
Yeah.
But a lot of for compared to what we usually see on Stargate, a lot of extras, right, in that battle.
Right. That's
Like,
true. That is probably the most people that we've seen on screen for the entire show.
right? You got some RPGs going off, you got the 50 cal going off. It's just some good action, and you don't get a ton of that. And the rest of the episode's very quiet after that, so you almost forget about it by the end.
Right.
But a solid component. The only thing that kind of misses a little bit is something you might not even notice unless you're us and rewatching it, Mary Kate, years later.
Yeah.
But it is slightly strange and awkward that we're back on Abydos. Presumably, it's actually unclear a little bit. They kind of hint that maybe Aminette had like captured some of the Abydonians, and that planet that they're on, whether they're like in a cage at the beginning, might be a
Oh
different.
yeah, no, they're not on Abydos. They're on a different planet.
Here.
But then
The funeral's back on Abydos.
the funeral's back on Abydos.
Yeah.
But also, we don't know if the funeral happened.
True, that's true too.
So the I guess the ambiguity could lead some people to dislike the episode in a way. Like I think it adds to it because I think it's interesting to see the dichotomy there. And I think the fact that he had all of this goodbye in his head, and that like the idea that she was able to like force ghost a last day with him into his mind before she died, like I like that. But because it's not clear, I can see why other people might not rate the episode as highly as we do.
Mhm. I do like how earnest some of it. Like when at the very end, when you do get the kind of reveal that it might be in their head, and like they come in and Sam she goes kind of goes like this. She goes, "Oh God," because she sees,
Yeah,
Dan
the whole
lying on the ground, staring at the dead body of his wife.
yeah.
It does remind you. It's nice sometimes when because the show is so funny so much of the time, and it is so like kind of action movie bravado so much of the time that when you get a little bit of emotional um, openness or a little bit of emotional vulnerability, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can, and I really enjoyed that. So
Yeah.
to finish my thought from before, the one thing that was kind of missing from that episode was that you don't see, like, we never see like the city of Abydos. You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't see the people. It loses a little bit of them feeling like a real people that we really want to care about. Just because we don't really, and I know why they don't do it, obviously, because it's a big visual effect or special effect thing that they got to deal with on a budget. That's the sort of thing that in the golden age of TV nowadays would never be like they would find a way to have that in there every single time.
Right.
It does it does hurt it a little bit, but you might not even miss it if you're not paying close attention.
Right. Okay. So did I say what For Reals 13 did? They give it a B minus?
I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know.
So next is Past and Present, which is what did you write, Courtney, for what episode this was?
Oh, this is where Linnea is back. Everyone's lost their memories.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yes, this is. Oh, right, because it happens directly after this. Because my favorite line of all time when Daniel Jackson says, I just lost my wife." Okay, well, I lost her a while ago, but like, I just like actually.
Yeah.
Right. Whose turn is it to go first? I don't remember.
Oh, that's right. I think
I think.
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
I'll
It's
just go.
It's
less
Courtney's
fresh
turn to
in my-
go first.
Courtney, you go first. It's less fresh in my mind. I did not have time to rewatch this one.
I'd probably give it an A, and it's because I don't remember Linnea. I didn't remember Linnea enough because we were watching this very separated, so I didn't remember who she was exactly. So when I'm seeing this new person that I don't remember what they called her, I was like, oh, this is very interesting. And I was trying to figure out the whole time what was going on and like why they've lost their memories and how they're going to get out of this. So it's kind of like a puzzle to work out to find out that we kind of knew it all along, I guess. And so I really liked it.
It's less fresh in my mind. I remember very much enjoying this episode. I remember the connection between Daniel and Kira slash Linnea
Yeah.
being something that really did work, and the mystery was good. I feel like I lack some credibility grading this because it is one of the ones that's less fresh in my mind. But I'll go with an A minus, which I think is what I gave the previous one as well. I very much enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that is interesting here is that I don't know how you guys watch these, but I remember back in the day watching it that the previously on kind of spoils the twist because they include stuff. I think if I remember correctly, I think they included stuff in the previously on component at the beginning of the episode, reminding us who Linnea was briefly.
Probably.
So you do expect that to play some component. You don't know what that's going to play.
Right.
You expect that
I
to
will
play.
say I don't know about on Amazon. I usually watch it on the DVD, so there is no previously on the DVD. Unless it's
I don't remember.
Unless it's a two-parter. So far in every episode I've seen, the only episodes that have had a previously on are when they're deliberately the second part of a two-parter. So so
I would have to
didn't-
research this to find out for sure. I
Right.
remember that, but I also could just have some weird phantom memory, or it could also be some case where they showed coming up next on Stargate Monday and showed a preview or something, and that was what threw me or something.
Right.
I'd have to look into it. I don't want to. But
no. So the next, or they for reals gave it a B. Jolinar's Memories is the next one, which is the first of the two-parters with Hell and Sokar. Doug, you are up first this time.
Yeah, I'll give it a B. Good episode. Yeah. I think it does have pacing issues because it was split into two episodes. But there's also a lot of cool stuff in it. I think obviously the set design and a lot of goes into just production is very good. So that's the positives there.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd also give it a B.
I would agree with you guys and probably give it a B, but for reals gave it a B plus. I don't think that's awful. The next one is the second part of the two-parter, which is The Devil You Know, which Courtney, you are up first on this one. I don't know how.
I think I'm gonna give it. An A minus. I know it's very big and it's very important, and I did at the very end, I did gasp, and so that's why I would definitely make sure it's kind of in that range. I don't know. I mean, I really like the storyline too, so maybe I'd give it an A. I don't know.
Actually,
I'm between an A minus.
My thought process on The Devil You Know, I'm changing because I don't remember, because actually the thing that I thought I'm going to agree with for reals on the B plus for Jolinar's Memories because of the way they revealed Apophis.
I thought that was in this one.
Was it in this one? What, Apophis being
they
there
reveal
at all?
it right at the end of it's
right at the end of Sokar and reveal Apophis, because Apophis kills Sokar. That's how we see him.
Yeah, no, but Apophis being in hell at all. Remember
it's revealed right at the end of Jolinar's Memories.
And then at the end of this one, it's revealed that Apophis didn't die. But the first crime, taking off the helmet and it being Apophis, is why I would give Jolinar's Memories a slight higher pick, I think I'd agree with the B plus, just because that was really, really, really well done, to the point where Peter Williams' name isn't in the credits specifically to not surprise that, like not throw off that plot twist, which I super appreciated.
Yep, I agree. I
But
forgot that he was revealed in that episode and not this one.
yeah, that's what I was like, wait, hold on, because I was thinking it was the other way. But so, Doug, your review for The Devil You Know.
I'll go with B plus. I think I gave Joel in Our Memories a B. I'll say this one's a little bit better. I think it finishes the two-parter a little stronger than it ended. I
Yeah.
like I don't know where I would have to go back and like compare like child to child, but whoever the child actor that they got for Jack, when they have his little memory bit there, and he
Oh,
let's have a catch. Like he gives that weird,
oh
weird totally
yeah.
out of it speech, and then he just ends it with "let's have a catch." That kid nails it.
Oh
Excellent
yeah.
kid
That kid who played
nails
Charlie
it.
in this episode was great.
Was fantastic. Like that's really emotionally effective. The other flashback sections are pretty solid as well. And the probably those torture sections are the best parts of that episode.
Oh, for sure.
Sokar's
Yeah.
moment when he finally gets mad, excellently acted. Great job, Sokar actor. It's a shame that you didn't stick around longer. Anytime you
Yeah.
blow a planet, even if it's a moon, that's pretty good. The visual effect, even though I think it's just a matte painting or whatever with a couple doodads of Sokar's planet, where you like see the two motherships in the background, it looks like some sort of city back there. Cool effect. It's
Yeah.
nice, even though they don't have the budget to like walk around a
Right.
city. Having that bit of like almost like flavor text, flavor background, I don't know what you call it, is really nice. It's like you
Yeah.
have that taste and you'd like to see more of it. So there's a lot of stuff going for it. The main detractors are just the pacing is still a little weird for the same reasons as the previous episode. And like Apophis escaping like last second with the beaming zipping off the planet and all the other general issues that come from budget with you've got a giant mothership and you see one room of it and things like that.
Yeah.
That's an issue throughout the entire show just because of their budget.
Yeah.
Right.
But that stuff holds it back to a little smaller extent, but a lot of fun stuff.
For reals, also give it a B plus. So we're starting to
All right. Level out a
line
bit.
up a little bit. Next is Foothold, which is the weird alien invasion episode where everyone is not really themselves and only Sam can tell. So, Doug, you're up first on that one.
Okay, this is one I didn't rewatch, so it's
Okay.
been years. I remember very much liking this episode. I'm gonna also go with a B plus, like the previous episode. It was good. It's not one of the top flight episodes, but
Yeah,
I remember very much enjoying it.
I agree.
I'm gonna go with a C plus. I did enjoy it, but it just could kind of give or take it in the end.
I think you just have such a disdain for Colonel Mayborn that the fact that he was kind of a good guy in this episode really fucked with your rating.
That's very possible.
I enjoy his delicious evilness.
Yeah.
I want to punch him in the face.
Oh no, you definitely want to punch him in the face, but I enjoy wanting to punch him in the face.
Fair, that's fair.
And for reals, also give it a B plus. The next one is Pretense, which I don't remember at all.
It's
That's
this
the trial.
is
That's the
when
alien.
Skara wins his body back.
Oh, it's the trial episode. Okay, that's good.
Yep.
That's good. Courtney, what do you think?
I think maybe also a C plus. It was kind of stale for me, but I really liked the ending of this one, and I always love a good callback, so I was glad to see Skara again and kind of see that he ended up okay in the end, I guess, or he got to like make his own choices in the end. But at the same time, I like throughout the episode, I was just like, it's fine.
I'll go with B minus. So pretty close to you. It's an episode that I enjoyed, but it's not fully hitting on all cylinders. It is nice to see the Knox again. Just like
That's true.
I do always love
Anytime we
that.
get to see the Knox,
don't
yeah.
get to see them very much, and it's just it's nice anytime they pop up. And it's also
Mhm.
nice to see the Toll. Like, even though maybe it'd be nicer to have more to do with them. Anytime the Tolans pop up or the Nox pop up, because we haven't seen Tolan since season one, I believe,
Right, since they left. Or no,
which is
what
also a great, like the original Tolan episode was a great episode, finding them on that like volcano planet and or not volcano
right.
planet that was like dying and them being covered in ash and then them walking through walls and we get the jigsaw guy.
Yeah, I just
You know,
love that they started this episode with Schrodinger, like sending the cat through the iris to be like, please open it. You're good. Um, for reals gave it a B plus as well. I think that probably plays more into the bringing the calling back to the Poland, the Nox, and Skara all at once.
Yeah.
The next episode is Ergo, which is Courtney's favorite episode of the season for no reason other than Dom DeLuise is just a hot mess and a half.
Okay, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's pretty high up there.
I laugh because it was an episode that they had to write Teal'c out of because Christopher Judge literally couldn't stop laughing on set, and he like went to the directors and was like, "Please take me out of as much as you can take me out of because I cannot do this." He could not stay in character as Teal'c because Dom DeLuise was just too funny. So I appreciate that aspect of it, but as an episode itself, Doug, how would you rate it?
I hate to go against the grain here, but especially because I haven't seen it super recently. It's been a few years. But I remember the humor not really being my cup of tea. So it just wasn't one that clicked for me, comedically. And obviously we all have different tastes in comedy. So it just is a personal
Yeah.
preference thing. But because the entire episode, I mean, he is Don DeLuise is that bit is the bit of the episode. Like the whole thing,
Yeah.
on whether you enjoy that performance, and it just didn't really do anything for me. So I'm going to give it a C. I expect that yours will be much higher, but
It will be. I'm gonna give it a B plus. I'm not gonna quite give it an A because the episode itself doesn't really matter. But
Right.
it was really fun for me and I had a great time and I laughed the entire time. So I just adored it.
Yeah, like I said, my thoughts on it are based entirely on the behind the scenes stuff. It has very little to do with the actual episode. So I think I probably would be a little closer to Doug than to Courtney. But for reals, gave it a B. So next,
days.
yeah, next we're at 100 days. And Courtney, you get to go first on this one. Yeah.
I don't know. I have such like I need to know more to figure out how I feel because like I said when we watched it, I'm like, is this the new Charade? Is this woman gonna chase Jack around? Are they gonna fall in love? And I'm sure it's not gonna happen. I'm sure we're never gonna see her again after that second episode we saw her in. But I'm gonna go with like a B minus. It was fine. And I wanted it to be more than it was. And I think that's why I have to give it a B minus because I don't think it's going anywhere.
I think I have similar feelings, but I just tend to judge it more on what it is than what it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still gonna go with, I think I'm gonna go with a B plus. I remember really enjoying the kind of the conceit of getting back there using Sokar's device. It was really nice, and it's good that Jack finally gets to go fishing. He's been talking about it for so long, and he's finally got the moment where he can just kind of settle down, like be relaxed. And it is really a pity that just because it wouldn't make sense, like from a dramatic standpoint, to be checking in on this planet every once in a while, that he's not like going to keep dating a random person through the Stargate. Like just logistically, it wouldn't work for the show. And so
No, which is why I was so mad about Charade because it didn't work. And so that's why she was never there.
so they can't keep it up. But I think during the course of the episode, that relationship does work, even though it can't really go anywhere. It within the episode, it does work, I think, at least reasonably well. And I just enjoy the change of pace that the episode provides. So I'm gonna go with a B.
That's totally fair. I am only gonna go with a B minus personally because I take it offensively the idea that Jack is dating anyone that isn't Sam. But that is a very, very personal problem. And for reals agrees with you, Doug, and gives it a B plus. Next up, we have Shades of Grey, which is the episode where Jack is a traitor, but not really. And Doug, how do you feel about that one?
Um, hmm, that's a tough one. You know what? I'm gonna go with B plus. I went with B with the last one. I'd say this one's a little bit better. I like the interplay. I've always enjoyed the what's it called? Not, I want to say the division, but it's not the division. What's the name of his the skeevy organization?
The NID.
NID. That's it. I had a brain fart for a second there. I apologize. Thank you for bringing it back around for me. Yeah, the NID. I always enjoyed the kind of like political interplay on the back end of that. And just even though like not for a second did I think that Jack really was like a bad guy,
Yeah.
uh, not knowing exactly how things were going to play out, there's still enough of intrigue there, um, kind of just to really kind of keep me hooked throughout the entirety of the episode. So I really enjoyed that one. Not quite in the upper echelon, not quite in the A range, but definitely B plus at least.
I'm gonna give it an A minus, but for all of the reasons you said. So like I think it hooked me because I knew that it wasn't face value what was happening, but I didn't know, I couldn't figure out what was gonna happen. And so yeah, I really like that.
For reals would agree with you, Courtney. They gave it an A minus. I would probably lean more toward Doug with a B plus, which is not that far off from an A minus, really. The next is New Ground, which is the one where we find a planet that we previously were unable to get to because somebody uncovered the Stargate, and then we have a weird episode that is sort of a metaphor for creationism versus evolution, but also a metaphor for the war in the Middle East, and it's really, really strange to me. So Courtney, how would you rate that episode?
Thanks for the setup. I don't know. I didn't hate it, but it didn't stick with me. So I might would go with a B minus just because I feel like I remember we had a really good discussion around it. So
Right.
it obviously had something there to like talk about and to like enjoy, but as a whole, the episode didn't really stick with me. So I think I'd go with B minus.
So this episode has the distinction of being one of the only episodes that I haven't rewatched this one recently, but 99% of the time when I look over like the plot summaries and the names, I go, "Oh yeah, I remember something about that episode." It was, something sticks out to me because I've seen the entire series through 3 times, like
Yeah.
almost every episode, something to stick out to me. And this one does not. So if it has literally, I remember nothing about this episode at all. So it can't have been that impressive. So we're just gonna go with a C and leave it at that.
Well, for reals gives it a B minus, and I would probably say for the same reason as Courtney that I would go in the C plus to B minus range, where it's like I had so much to say about it, but the episode itself didn't mean anything to me. Next up we have Maternal Instinct, which is the Heresis Mother Nature Chinese temple episode, which is one of the ones you watched today, right, Doug?
Yes, I did. I watched this one
Yes.
today.
All right, so you are up first with your grade.
Um, okay, I have a personal bone to pick with this episode, so this might color things a little bit. I'm gonna go with a B minus.
Can
I'm
you
tempted
explain
to
your
go. I'm
personal?
tempted to go. Yes, I can. I'm tempted to go into
Okay.
the C's, but I feel like that's being
Well,
unfair.
I just didn't know if your personal bone to pick was falling into spoiler category because a lot of this episode
No, my
does
personal
fall into.
bone to pick is that all those stupid little platitude sayings that the monk has are such bullshit. They're just because you're bad at communicating your ideas it doesn't make you deep. It just makes you bad at communicating ideas. Like if I translate everything into like an inside joke slash metaphor that only I understand, that doesn't somehow make me wiser. That just means that I'm a pretentious asshole. So yeah,
You're 100% right.
I don't like Mr. Monk. He's full of it. And he doesn't deserve to ascend to a higher plane of being. So the Jaffa should have just when they killed him, he just should have just been dead. In fact, we should have gotten a after credit stinger of him in hell being like, "Man, I really thought I was going to ascend, but it turns out that I'm a pretentious asshole." And then the devil can like sidle up to him and be like, "Yeah, you are, man. I'm sorry that you thought that was like the way to go, but no, it wasn't."
I want you
That,
to write this episode. This like after
yeah,
episode.
right. That was not at all where I thought you were going, and I have never been more excited to hear what comes out of your mouth. So,
I will
um,
say, Omidasala, nice to meet Omidasala for the first time. Um,
right.
and it's good that Daniel Jackson isn't going to have to carry around a baby in every episode for the next few seasons. So I'm glad they found a way to justify him not doing that.
Mhm.
Right. 'Cause-
Um, and we had a fun little bit of Asian culture, I guess. And
yeah,
Jafar is being struck by lightning. That was fun.
yeah, that's true. And if you listen to our podcast episode about it, I go in very detailed, in depth about the accurate things that they do with Asian culture and the things that I liked about it. But you're not entirely wrong that speaking in proverbs does not help communication at all.
Seeing Braytech
No.
without his boots on, like carrying his little boots around, his big boots around,
Yes.
that was delightful.
Yes.
I enjoyed that immensely.
I did really like the part of the end of the episode where Jack had to remind Daniel to put his shoes back on before
Perfect.
he
That was
went home.
perfect.
That was
That was
great. Courtney, how do you feel about this episode?
You're not wrong. I'll start there. But I think I'd probably give it an A because it like puts so much out. Like we've been searching for this child and then we like now know that it's going to be safe and we discover this new person who has these like really big powers that we haven't really seen in the same way. And I thought it like it flowed a little bit better than some of the others for me at least. um and so I always like a little magical touch, so I liked Daniel not really but kind of learning how to do stuff with his mind. I liked it as an episode, and I feel like it moved us. Obviously, I don't know anything, so I could just be like making up stuff. But I feel like it moved us
We
forward
could
a lot.
never ever see any of those things ever again. And then it would probably
It's possible. It's possible. I've watched the first 3 seasons now. I wouldn't be like 100% shocked, but yeah. So I feel like it's really
You
moving us
also
forward.
never
And
know it's going to
it did
come
it.
back. Like,
that's true. We did have
They
the
don't-
number of things that came back this season that were like from the movie or the first season that you're like, oh shit, I forgot that even existed.
I mean,
Right.
Kira slash Leanne,
Linnea, yeah.
Linnea, that's a random callback that from when she escaped in what was that, season 1?
Yeah.
That you don't forget. And there's also, well, I can't spoil it, but there's a really great callback coming up that I very much enjoy. So sometimes they just remember things that they left untied in like a bottle episode,
Yeah.
like a couple seasons prior, and all of a sudden it just becomes extremely relevant out of the blue. So you just never know.
Yep.
Next is Crystal Skull.
Okay.
And yeah, and Courtney, you're up first with this one.
I don't think this episode matters. I don't know, but I don't think it does. But I find it still kind of wonderful. So I'm gonna give it a B plus. I don't know if we're coming back to Grandpa Nick or what I think that's his name.
Yes,
And
it is.
I liked how kind they were to each other, and you heard like everybody was really going out of their way to help. But I don't know. I liked the way the storyline played out, but I don't really see a lot of relevance moving forward.
That
You didn't give it a score though.
Oh, she did. No, she did. She said a B plus. You said a B plus.
did?
Okay, good.
Oh,
I
sorry.
thought it. I was like, did I just think it in my head?
Apparently I had it blacked out for a second.
It's
Um,
possible. I just thought it. Mary Kate just heard it in her head though too. So
no,
you never
that's
know.
true.
my brain broke and I apparently didn't hear anything. I'm gonna concur. I'll
Happens.
go B plus. Solid
Okay,
episode. I didn't
well,
have any like really strong feelings about it, but
yeah, for reals, and I both also agree with you with the B plus.
Ugh, love it.
And then the last episode, Nemesis. Douglas, what do you think?
I'm going with an A. It is a really, really good episode. Nemesis is one of my favorites. Um, just it's our first introduction to the replicators, who I
Yeah.
love. They're very much like I think the person said they're like the Borg. They're like the Borg,
Yeah.
or in a lot of ways, it's a lot like zombie fiction, right? That's a single
Yeah.
one is not very scary,
Mhm.
but it makes you nervous, and you know that the second there start being more of them, you're in deep, deep shit.
Yeah.
And every time they come up and they do that little replicator theme that I'm terrible at humming,
Yeah.
they have that stinger that they use with the replicators in the score. It just kind of gets your blood pumping. And there's just something really satisfying about just unloading shotguns on the little Lego spiders and they're bursting into
That
pieces
is
all over the place.
That's
that
true.
is very satisfying.
And they just keep coming down the hall. And it's like I don't know if you guys what sort of video game experience I have in the room. I know a little bit of MKs,
Quite a bit.
but
Yeah,
if you've
she
ever-
plays much more than I do.
if you've ever played like a wave based like video game like a tower
Yeah.
defense style game, it feels like that where it's like
100%.
it's like you're stuck defending a position and they just keep coming and you're trying to like just keep up with the momentum to not let them advance on you. And there's like a tension there with the replicators when they just keep coming and just keep coming and they're always like that. They're just relentless and mindless in their attack. Every time that they come up, that they're terrifying in that way, like just like zombies or like the Borg or any of these kind of like there's these like kind of hive mind style relentless creatures, and they're excellent. I love the replicators, and this is a fun introduction to them. And you get that little taste, especially then when they beam in the Stargate, and they're just like the replicators coming from every angle, and it's just like guns a blazing, like we need to defend this point for so long. It's just
Yeah.
kind of working on all cylinders there. The only reason I don't give it the A plus is because the like second act is a little slow when they're kind of like getting all the pieces set up. But really fun. I like the replicators so much.
So I'm gonna give it an incorrect score because it's how I feel. I'm gonna give it an A minus. I because I don't have enough feelings about the replicators yet. I did really like this episode, and I mean you put Thor in an episode and I'm pretty much happy. So like it doesn't take much for me when Thor's in an episode, but I love when Sam takes charge. It's always very fun for me, and like they just I don't know, there was some good quips, there was good like storyline, and I know one of the things we talked about was like Daniel Jackson wasn't on the ship because he had just had appendicitis or whatever like 2 days before. And I thought that played really well. Like I thought that it was necessary for him to kind of be back on base, and we see Hammond getting emotional, and so like there's a lot of really good stuff in
Hammond
this
getting
episode.
emotional. Hammond getting emotional is the best part of any episode. When we get to see him being a person, I can't.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly from I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but I think from the behind the scenes, right? The actor Michael Shanks actually had appendicitis, correct?
Yes, yeah, he actually had his appendix burst 2 days before they started filming, so they had to change the whole episode and give Daniel appendicitis to write out Michael Shanks being in the episode.
That cold open is lovely too, with the him and Colonel O'Neill and the with the little talk they do where he starts to sit up and he's like, maybe not, and the whole thing with him and Sam with the fishing.
Sam and trying to go fishing, yeah, it's great.
Which is a lovely reoccurring thing with him always trying to go fishing and he never can.
Yeah, no, I love it. For Reals also gives it an A minus. I would probably give it an A as well. I think having knowledge of the replicators beyond what you have, Courtney, is probably why Doug and I are just that tiny bit higher than you, which makes sense.
I will say, when I first saw that episode on, I think, a Stargate Monday back in the day, and that was also like seeing that episode was my first introduction to the replicators. I had not seen them in an episode.
Yeah.
On Nemesis. And at the time, I still really, really liked that episode.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would have been an A+ at the time, but I do remember liking that episode at the time as well.
I still really like it. I just can feel that I'm missing a lot. And I think
Yeah.
that's where it comes from, is that I feel that it's missing. So
Well, we are running very long, but who is
yeah.
surprised by that? Um,
Well, you made
so
us go through the entire season episode by episode with your game, so I'm blaming
that
you.
is true. It's fair, but I mean, it was
It was a
fun.
fun game.
And um,
Well, I enjoyed it because
I
I haven't been here to discuss each episode.
exactly, we get new opinions.
Yeah.
So before we do wrap up, I do want to ask Courtney, because I can't ask Doug because he knows. What do you think's happening in season 4? Where do you think we're going?
So I'm just gonna like fire my thoughts at you, I think, because I have
Perfect.
just a few that are just one-offs. I think that we're gonna have another alternate reality episode this season because I feel like we have one every season.
That's fair.
I wonder if Apophis is gonna rebuild his fake SGC planet now that he's kind of like back and he can show that he's not dead. I don't know what's going on with Linnea, but I feel like she'll be back around. I feel like we're gonna kind of see where she went if she turns back. I don't know if she's just good now. I don't understand where we've left her. So it'd be nice to at least like see what's happening.
Yeah, that one
Especially
I'm not.
because
That one I'm just gonna tell you flat out that that's over. She decided to be good and live out the
we
rest of her
lost like
days.
the strong women that we're fighting against. We had Hathor, she died. We have Sharae, she died. We have Linnea, she turned good. So maybe we're gonna get another like Egyptian goddess that comes in and like stir some stuff up. I feel like we haven't seen Jacob in a minute. It's been like 7 episodes or so. And then
Oh, he
I
was just in
assume
that two-parter. You mean Sam's dad?
Yeah, Jacob
it's
Carter.
been like
Yeah,
I mean, he was
7.
in the two. He was in the two-parter with. That was
yeah,
episode
but
Yeah, that was
that was
episode
also
12.
like mid-season.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I just
And I
have
feel like we
different
saw him a lot
expectations
more
how
in
often
season.
people will pop up.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like we saw him more in season 2, and so it felt like I didn't see him at all this season, even though it was like I still saw him a couple times.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll see something about like either Mother Nature, maybe from Thor, is going to tell us more about her and this child and how it's going on because he knows everything. I don't know. Maybe the Lego spiders are going to have like a run in with Apophis because I know, like you mentioned in passing, that like the Goa'uld are a little bit frightened of them, or like they're not as powerful as them. So maybe we'll have a Goa'uld replicator run in. I don't know. These are just some thoughts that I'm putting into the universe of what could potentially come up for this season. Did I get any of them right?
Wait, are we allowed to tell her?
Don't tell me which ones I got right. Just tell me if I like, if anything hit.
Okay. There are some things that are. I
Yeah.
can't remember. I'd have to look at the episode list. I'm trying to remember what happens this season, what happens in like season 5, for example.
Yeah, because there
Some
are
of those
things that like
are close. Yeah.
yeah, but there are things that like run through the whole 10 seasons of the show that are
Sure.
connected in a way that you don't realize they're connected the first couple times you see them. So like there are things that we have yet to delve into.
I'm just gonna look at the episode list.
I'm so ready.
You're probably better at like remembering just based off of the list itself. While Doug is taking a peek at that, I'm letting everybody here know that we kind of started talking about it on the podcast last week, and then I was like, we should probably do this off air instead of
Figure it
talking
out
to you,
first.
instead of trying to figure out our nonsense live. We have decided that because Stargate is so fucking long and we will never remember anything, we are going to do multiple DNA awards for this show. And so we are going to do our DNA part 1 for Stargate next week. If you have suggestions, please send them to us because we will actually not be recording the DNA awards till after I get back from London. So we might have time to look at your suggestions before we record, which is not usually true. Sorry.
Yeah.
But so we are going to be doing our DNA awards for this, and Do you have any last things to say about Stargate, Doug, about season 3, about what's happening in season 4?
I don't know. One thing I did notice when I was rewatching this is that the season finale of season 3 was our first time in the re-recording or in the re-watching that we have the slow pan opening crawl of the like Egyptian god face instead of the normal opening.
Yes. So weirdly, okay, this is the weirdest thing, and you would know if you listen to podcasts. I'm just kidding. Amazon has gotten rid of the retconned intro, and everything on Amazon on season 3 is the slow pan.
Really?
But yes, but the season finale, even on the DVD, is the slow pan for some reason.
Yes. I was watching it on DVD.
Yes, and even on the DVD, it's the slow pan. But on Amazon, all of season 3 is the slow pan because it went back to the original air recording thing, and I have no idea why. Cannot figure it out. We had a whole 15-minute conversation about film rights and why and things like that, and we still haven't figured out why. But yes, even on the DVD, for some reason, it goes back to the slow pan for this one, and I have no idea. Cannot begin to understand. And then I was telling my mom, and she is like, if Courtney and her licensing rights and you and Doug and you're nerding out, if the 3 of you can figure it out, nobody else gives a single shit. And I was like, thanks, Mom.
Well,
You're not wrong.
Right.
But
you're
also
not.
yeah, so with that, do you have any last words before we sign off?
This was really fun because I don't get a chance to talk about weird, nerdy Stargate stuff very often. Because there just aren't, for some reason, it's hard to find people that watch a lot of Stargate.
That's true. It is hard.
It's such a good show.
They are on Reddit. That's for real, for real. They're all over Reddit. And weirdly, I at Comic Cons, but I guess those are the places that you would expect them to be. But I'm sure this will not be the last time we will have Doug on the podcast. I did laugh because as I was re-listening to the season 2 wrap up today, I said on the podcast that the reason I didn't invite Doug to do the season 2 wrap up was because he told me that maybe if I stuck around, he'd get me a Christmas present next year. And so I decided to uninvite him from the podcast.
That feels fair. But
now that Dan and I have been together for over a year, he's stuck with me, and so I'm sure I will get
Christmas,
him back
I have
on.
your present.
It's true. So I guess I'm sure I can convince him to be on the podcast again at some point.
I'll have to give you a list of my favorite episodes or maybe we'll discuss it off air what my favorite episodes are. I'll try to get on for those. You already know Menace. I definitely want to be on for Menace.
Absolutely.
There's a few other
Monday
Prodigy
nights
is also coming up next season, so I might have to come on for Prodigy. That's another one of my favorites.
It's true, and we'll be recording it during the summer when our schedules are more flexible. Well, at least mine and Doug's are. Courtney's, yours is the same, but.
Well, no, you're not going to get to Prodigy until that's episode 18 or something or 17. You won't get to that.
So it'll be in the fall. Just kidding.
Well over, yeah.
Oh God,
we can adjust our schedule a bit.
Unless you start doing 2 episodes a week or something.
Well, we do 2 episodes a week, just not of Stargate.
Right.
Which brings me to how
join the
to
podcast.
The episode.
Listen to us.
No, I know you only do 1 episode a week, but I've been telling MK for a long time, if you want to finish this in a reasonable amount of time, you really need to find a way to step up the pace.
Hey, but we have a horror episode too to do every week, so
yeah. Which brings me
don't
to
get rid of
closing.
my segment.
Efficiency.
If you would like to share your feedback with us for the DNA Awards, if you have questions for Doug, if you want his number, actually, if you don't want his number, please don't email me because I have to fend people off of him more than I'd like to admit. Don't look at me like that. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Have you not heard of this yet?
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay. I thought you meant podcast listeners. I was very confused, but now I know what you're talking about. Never mind.
If you have feedback, please email us at deathandaliens@gmail.com, or you can follow us at all of the social media at Death and Aliens. You can find me everywhere at EMKAY_superstar.
And you can find me at CECloud13.
And Doug does not use social media, so you cannot find him anywhere.
Although my Twitter account did get hacked.
Oh, good. That
Yeah.
means you don't use it.
It had been I got the email that was like your Twitter password has been changed. I was like, that's not me. And also I don't live in Michigan. Via an IP spoofing from like I can't remember where it was from. It was like the Philippines or something like that. And I was like, this is not me. So I went in and changed my Twitter password, and then I looked at like what I'd been doing on Twitter, the past, and all I'd been doing like was retweeting like basically like spam stuff, like invest in this Bitcoin thing. It'll definitely make you lots of money. Like just like retweeting, not even tweeting, but just retweeting those sorts of things. And so I went and reported them all as spam to Twitter's thing, and then I signed off of Twitter and will not be on there again probably for another 5 years.
Probably. But yeah, so this episode will be sometime in the middle of July. I don't even know what day it is anymore because we've recorded so many episodes in the last 2 weeks.
I wrote it down.
But you can, no, it's on the 9th. Yeah. But so we will be back next week with our DNA awards. But first we will be live on Thursday with our American Horror Story wrap up episode. So we will see you all then. Bye.
Bye.